and I'll close here.
Ilya, would you like us to stop video as well?
No, it's not necessary. Okay, so okay. So thank you very much, dear friends, for joining us today to commemorate the memory of Eli Metchnikoff, who was actually the founder of our field, of the field of longevity science. I hear some echo, so I don't know what's going on. 1 second, please. I'll close it here. Leave, 1 second. Thank you very much, dear friends, for joining us today. Okay, so now we're back. Yeah. So he was the founder of our field. He coined the term gerontology back in 1903. Not only gerontology, but also thanatology, the study of death, as well as cell immunology. Thanks to him, we have the notions that cells actually play a role in immunity. So he's a massively important figure in the science of longevity, but also he was a great longevity advocate, longevity activist. He actually started our whole movement about 120 years ago. It is befitting that we commemorate his memory. I prepared a short presentation, to just briefly tell who he was, and then we'll have a short greeting from Ukraine, from Metchnikoff's birthplace, and then we can continue with the presentation. So let me share my screen. That's my screen, and let me try to share it now. A second. No. No, 1 more second, please. I'm sorry about this. Short glitch. I'll be back. No, this one. Okay, that's the screen I want to share. Okay. Yeah, that's the screen I want to share. That's great. So now, who was Metchnikoff? Metchnikoff, as I said, was the founder of our field, yeah. So and today we will talk a little bit about his legacy. Why is he still important for us today? Yeah. That's perfect. First of all, some signposts from his life. He was born exactly 175 years ago in Kharkov area in 1882. About 140 years ago, he discovered phagocytosis. Basically, he took an amoeba, stick a needle in it, and saw that some cell-like structures start gathering and trying to eat it. That's how he discovered cell immunity. Before this observation, people didn't know that cells played any role in immunity. That's how he became the founder of cellular theory of immunity. And for that, he got the Nobel Prize in 1808, together with Paul Ehrlich. in recognition of the work on immunity. So that's basically what he did before entering the field of aging, the important stage. So he started to work on aging after he immigrated to France as a sub-director of Pasteur Institute in Paris, and that's where most of his work on aging was done. First of all, why do we remember him? Not just for his scientific achievements, but also because of his ideological legacy. For example, he posited very clearly the goal to extend healthy life. As he said, what is our goal in life? Our goal in life is actually to extend life. There's no other goal than that, and he hoped that humanity will be eventually successful in doing so. So we're still following his commandment. He also said that he said that aging is a disease. So if you need a quote of an authoritative person who said that aging should be considered like a disease, something you can fight, something we can overcome, that was Metchnikoff. And the usual argument that, you know, aging is natural, so we shouldn't fight it, actually was countered by him 120 years ago, when he said that, you know, women in labor are also suffering and it is natural. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything to help them. Same with age. It takes me some time to change the slide. One more second, sorry. Okay, so just a couple of words about his science. He posited probably the first scientific theory of aging. Basically, he said that in our organism there exists a battle between so-called primitive elements such as destructive phagocytes or putrefactive bacteria of our intestines, and noble elements, the parenchymal tissue, the heart. So basically, he introduced a systemic histological model of aging. So by attenuating the primitive elements, for example, by probiotic means, we can actually strengthen the noble elements, the parenchymal tissues. So that might not sound as too involved right now, but that was actually the first systemic theory of aging. And based on this theory, he offered quite a lot of anti-aging interventions. One is the probiotic diet that everybody knows. Basically, he was the founder of the whole field of microbiome research by saying that by influencing the microbiome, the putrefactive bacteria, we can extend life, extend healthy life. He was also a pioneer of systemic immunotherapy. He offered, together with his student Jules Bordet, he offered to kind of vaccine against aging. Basically, he developed serums against particular tissues, and then he injected those serums in small doses, and that stimulated the tissues, kind of affected rejuvenation. Of course, the serums are still used today, and it's probably one of the first-line defenses also against COVID. There are also other interventions based on Metchnikoff's theory. For example, the Scottish researcher Will Mullane suggested that if the intestines are the main source of putrefaction, the main source of intoxication of our organism, we should just cut it off, get rid of it once and for all. 25% of people died in the operation. but you know, the scientific logic was there. Still, Metchnikoff didn't endorse it directly, but you know, he said that there is some results. In time, the technique may be developed, but he wasn't responsible for it himself. And about this time, he posited his theories, there also emerged all kinds of rejuvenation interventions, mainly by hormone injections, by injections of sex glands or sex gland transplantations or extracts from sex glands. Metchnikoff wasn't involved directly, but he evaluated those interventions. He supported them on the one hand, but on the other hand, he suggested we should combine them with lifestyle improvements. So finally, why is he important? Why is his legacy still relevant today? First of all, we see that the whole field of gerontology started about 120 years ago, 100 years ago, but already we have a massive development. If before Metchnikoff we didn't know that cells played any role in immunity even or in aging, now we beginning to synthesize cells ourselves or intervene into the makeup. So huge progress was done in those 100 years, and this gives us hope that more progress will be made in the next 100 years or even much earlier. Also, he posited some of the main ideological imperatives to fight aging, to prolong healthy life. So we're still following those imperatives today. And perhaps most importantly, we see on the Metchnikoff example that from basic aging research, many therapies were developed, the probiotic therapy, the systemic therapy. So we see that from intervention to aging, we can develop therapies that may be important not just for the entire organism, for the entire aging process, but also for particular diseases. And there's actual practical outcomes that we all use. Also, today, 120 years since the beginning of the field, we can also pause a little and think, are those developments enough? Have we achieved enough in those 120 years? Probably not. So this gives us another motivation to further develop the field, remembering our history, learning from history, but also looking forward into the future. So that was basically my my presentation, short intro into Metchnikoff. And now I will, if you have any questions, maybe time for a question or two. We'll ask questions in the chat. Do you have any questions, or you can just unmute yourself and ask directly if you have a question? No? No, great. Then we go directly to Aubrey, who will speak about fighting infections with rejuvenation biotechnology, how the ideas of Metchnikoff, the connection of immunity and aging, actually interconnecting now 120 years since his time.
Well, thank you, Ilya. Can everybody hear me? Ilya, am I on?
Yeah.
Great. So first of all, I want to thank Ilya for arranging this event. It's a delight to see so many old friends as well as so many new friends here today. And I think it's entirely appropriate to be commemorating the anniversary of Metchnikoff. I first of all want to say that it's particularly appropriate that Ilya should be organizing this, because a strong case can be made, I believe, that Ilya is currently the world's leading historian of the research field we're talking about here, the research into aging as a medical problem. I was fortunate enough to be the external examiner for Ilya's PhD, I think 6 years ago, something like that. So I recommend to everybody to read this extremely informative and detailed, of course, account of the history of aging research across many countries and a long time period. Now, of course, Ilya does not have very much competition today with regard to historians in this field, and that's a pity. But you know, in the absence of that competition, I think it is absolutely fantastic that Ilya put so much work into ensuring that we all have a good historical understanding of how we got where we are today. I'm not really very fond, actually, of the idea of identifying a single individual as the founder of, well, of anything really. You know, it's a bit like trying to say who founded rock and roll. One can certainly argue that gerontology was kind of founded by Roger Bacon, or perhaps even, you know, Francis Bacon or Denham Harman. You know, one can make cases for all of these people. But I would agree with Ilya that Metchnikoff has perhaps the strongest case if one is forcing oneself to pick a single person. Certainly the fact that he actually coined the term gerontology is very important. But there are really two things that I want to focus on in this brief talk this morning. Well, it's morning for me. Which is one of which Ilya already alluded to, namely that Metchnikoff did not only pioneer the scientific study of the biology of aging as a medical problem, he also very much got involved in advocacy, in making this field, you know, visible and conspicuous to people. And I believe that we are still very short of that in this field. Of course, there are lots of reasons why we are short of it. Many scientists just do not feel particularly able, particularly skilled at advocacy, at going out and making the case to a general audience for their field. And a lot of scientists feel, I think, that it would be difficult to say what they would like to say in the context of their career. They would prefer kind of not to rock the boat. I've been very fortunate in my career in this field to be in a position of relative independence so that I can more or less tell it like it is and get away with it. But yeah, the fact that so many people in our field feel the need to be silent and not to leverage their academic authority to get more interest and conversation about this field, that is a shame. It is changing. Over the past few months, I have taken many opportunities to highlight the fact that David Sinclair, of course, another very prominent gerontologist, took the trouble to write a book for a general audience whose title is Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. Now that is an extremely provocative title, almost as provocative as Ending Aging, which of course is the title of my own book from 2007. But the point is that, unlike me, David is a professor at Harvard. And I would go so far as to say that if he had written a book with that title, even as little as 10 years ago, he would have had a hard time keeping his job. It is, it is a sign of the times that authoritative people with a lot to lose are now in a position to actually get out there and talk like this. Now, David, I will say, has always been on the courageous end of the spectrum among people with faculty positions. And so he and I have been good friends for a long time. But I see that this is the way things are going. And perhaps within only a couple of years more, we will see a tidal wave of people following David's lead and coming out and talking about aging, not just as a medical problem, but as a medical problem that we are within striking distance of actually solving. So that's the one big thing I wanted to point out today. Advocacy is critical, and Metchnikoff very much pioneered and showed the way for us in that regard. The other thing that, of course, in this day and age with the pandemic still raging around the world that I want to mention is the intersection between aging and the immune system, which, of course, Metchnikoff symbolized very powerfully by virtue of his expertise in both areas. The immune system is undoubtedly one of the very most complicated components of the body, arguably more complicated than any part of the body other than the brain. And we still, as of today, have no real reason to believe that we are even close to fully understanding how it works. But nevertheless, of course, we have saved a lot of lives over the years with only a very primitive understanding of how the immune system works. Even before Metchnikoff, we had the advances made by Pasteur and Jenner and people like him, people like them, which started to bring down the rate of infant mortality and indeed mortality in childbirth and throughout life very substantially. By the time Metchnikoff started to talk about the biology of aging, the life expectancy in wealthy European countries had risen to around 40, between 40 and 50, whereas only 50 years previously, it was maybe 15 years less than that, if not more. So that was already a big deal. And of course, it continued thereafter, and it continues to this day in the developing world. Life expectancies are continuing to rise, largely because of the advances made in medicine back then that were on the basis of an extremely poor and limited understanding of how the immune system works. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us, I think, two things. First of all, in the context of the pandemic, it tells us that there is a huge shortage of resource applied to restoring and maintaining the quality of the immune system of the elderly in a state that resembles the immune systems of young adults. And, you know, it really pains me to look at the number of lives that have been lost and are being lost, which potentially could have been saved if more effort and more resources had gone into the rejuvenation of the immune system over the past decade or two. Certainly the advances that have been made, despite lack of funding over the past few years in that area, are very substantial. And it's because of those advances that we know that if there had been more money and more effort, then those advances would have been much more substantial. And we could very easily have saved a lot of lives that are being lost right now among the older population of the world. So that is, you know, terrible, but perhaps we will learn from it. Perhaps we will actually now come back and look at what we could have done and what we must do in the future in terms of allocating better resources to the restoration and maintenance of the immune system in the elderly. That's a critical thing. Maybe I should just stop there because I think I've probably been going for 10 minutes already. So I just again want to thank Ilya for putting on this event and to thank all of you for dialing in from all over the world. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of the conference. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Aubrey, for supporting this. You know, just another step along the way. Here's a few questions. We'll have very short, just remember, very short rounds of presentations, very short rounds of questions. So here's Vyacheslav asks, Aubrey, why not try your theory and apply several interventions in single mice, not only one as usual? If you want to.
Yes, I certainly do. So this is a very, very good question. And actually, I think that the future of Sense Research Foundation is very likely over the next couple of years to move strongly in that direction. As many of you will know, a lot of the research that Sense Research Foundation has supported and performed over the past several years is now being performed in companies, in startup companies around the world that have received strong investment from angel investors and seed investors, because the private sector investment community has woken up to this field and has decided that a lot of these technologies are within striking distance of actual application to humans and therefore of actual revenue. But there are still other areas of research in this field, in rejuvenation technology, which have not yet achieved that level of proof of concept of investability. And that's really why Sense Research Foundation still exists as a non-profit public charity based here in California. So, of course, we expect and hope that everything will move into the private sector in due course. But probably the very last thing that will move there is the combination of therapies. Combining these therapies, rejuvenation technologies, and giving them all to the same people at the same time is vital for actually achieving the end goal. And of course, that will be preceded by applying them simultaneously to mice. But there's not so much money in that. It's harder to make money out of putting things together that individually exist already. So I think it's quite likely that Sense Research Foundation will be doing exactly that as a big part of its activities over the next few years.
Thank you, Aubrey. One last question from Nicholas. I would like to ask Aubrey if the article Steve Horvath, Hard Cultured, and others recently published could lead to robust mouse rejuvenation.
Yeah, it's a very exciting result that Steve and Harold and others have published recently. And I haven't fully absorbed it yet, to be honest. I want to take it very seriously and work out, what it really means in terms of what experiments should be done next and so on. One thing I will say, though, as a slight word of caution about this study, is that we still are at the very beginning of our understanding of the causal linkage between epigenetic clocks and the rest of aging. We are, we very much want to know what will happen physiologically in terms of mental and physical function of an organism as a result of interventions whose proximate target is the epigenetic clock, the methylation state of the key loci that comprise that clock. There's a wide spectrum of opinion here. I see Josh Mitteldorf is here. He said a bunch of stuff about this, thinking that maybe the epigenetic clock is upstream, and if we can fix it or manipulate it, then we will have widespread effects. A lot of people, including myself, think that actually the epigenetic clock may be rather a long way downstream, but that's not to say that manipulating epigenetics is a non-starter. The truth is probably a hybrid of all of these things, that some epigenetic changes during life can be manipulated for beneficial therapeutic purposes.
Thank you very much, Aubrey. Yeah, thanks again. So the next is Alexei. I think you're next in line. Alexei, you there? Alexei, you go
hello,
before
everybody.
Daria. So you have the.
It's up to you. I will start my slides. Can you see slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. As Ilya mentioned before, Ilya Metchnikoff, one of the person who established both gerontology and immunology, nevertheless, the harmonious theory of immunosenescence is still ongoing, as Aubrey told also. Natural immunity consists of three interrelated parts: physiological barriers, innate immunity, and adaptive immunity. According to Graham Pavlik, immunosenescence results in increased susceptibility to and severity of infectious disease, and to contribute to many, or perhaps all, non-communicable age-associated diseases, among them cancer, cardiovascular disease, and autoimmunity. We know that antimicrobial peptides are involved in chemotaxis, activation of innate adaptive immune cells in different animals from Drosophila to humans. And on a Drosophila model, it was shown that hyperactivation of defensin proteins, including Metchnikoff, significantly reduces the lifespan. C-reactive protein is a soluble pathogen pattern recognition receptor. It binds to phosphorylated of cell membranes of damaged cells to induce complement or immune cell activation. Its hyperactivity is a biomarker of aging and connected with the inflammation and fibrosis. The molecular mechanisms of the induction of different particular pathways and the assembly of the inflammasome and chronic sterile inflammation with aging was called by Claudio Franceschi inflammaging. One of the part of inflammaging is the activation of TLR cell surface receptors that can recognize pathogen patterns from different pathways signaling. TLR4 is of particular interest in connection with aging since it can be activated by cytotoxic oxysterols. For example, 7-ketocholesterol, which are formed in tissues during inflammation or come from long-stored food. Its activation leads to mitochondrial dysfunction and inflammatory reaction. The good news is that TLR4 is inhibited by exposure to substances like cacao beans. SIGA-STING pathway is the main intracellular sensor of viral invasion, including SARS-CoV-2 to induce interferon-1 and 3 production. Interestingly, the STING pathway is hyperactivated with aging by internal chromatin and mitochondrial DNA fragments in the cytosol, with the consequent interferon induction, cellular senescence, and apoptosis. It could be why old people more suffer from COVID infection. Some simple sugars like glucose, fructose, galactose in the presence of transition metal ions like iron and copper act chemically with amino acid residues in the proteins, including collagen and elastin, causing not only an increase in intracellular matrix stiffness, but also the formation of glycation end products that induce chronic inflammation through the array receptors on the surface of cells, such as vascular endothelial cells. Cellular senescence itself can induce inflammation by creating inflammatory cytokines, so-called senescence-associated secretory phenotype. According to Baker's study, elimination of senescent cells prolongs the lifespan and health span of mice. Adiposity is another source of inflammation. Adipocyte hypertrophy leads to the secretion of pro-inflammatory factors and chemoattractants for T and B cells. In addition, there are many other ways of induction of the main pro-inflammatory transcription factor NF-kappa-B, including vitamin D deficiency, circadian rhythm disturbance, aldosterone, angiotensin II induction. And in our experiments on the Drosophila model, we inhibited the different underlying pathways of NF-kappa-B. In most cases, this led to an increase in lifespan. It is worth noting that many substances of natural origin contained in food can inhibit NF-kappa-B pathway. Aging accompanied by gut microbiota alteration, like decreased overall diversity and an increased abundance of pro-inflammatory species that can be part of systemic inflammation and many aging-related diseases. Internal virome aging-related changes can affect different age-dependent diseases. For example, cytomegalovirus is one of the main cause of premature aging of immunity. It could be a risk factor for severe COVID also. One of the pillars of adaptive immunity is the thymus. After an active period of creation and the training of few T cells in childhood, at the time of puberty, the thymus undergoes involution, losing the stromal part and filling with the fat. CD8 T cells, CD8 plus T cells are required for clearing virally infected cells, but are those most affected in senescence. Potential holes in the repertoire of antibodies represent one of the biggest problems when the old immune system must face a new challenge, for example, SARS-CoV-2. Immunosenescence, a depletion of natural killer cells and the CD8 plus T cells could be the reason for the dysfunction of immune clearance of senescent cells. Senescence of hematopoietic stem cell niche and the hematopoietic stem cells themselves, stiffed extracellular matrix, systemic inflammation and endocrine shift reduces the homing and the regenerative capacity of hematopoietic stem cells and increases pro-inflammatory myeloid-based differentiation. And the recent studies revealed that long-lived species are characterized by the altered number of copies, nucleotide sequence, and activity of particular genes of innate and acquired immunity. Some research on this topic now. As a conclusion, among the different mechanisms of immune associated mechanisms represent at least a third part. I highlighted in red on the scheme. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alexey. If you have questions to Alexey, I don't know, Magomed, if it was a question for Alexey or not. Should epigenetic rejuvenation include brain? If so, will it mean obliterating accumulated memories? It's a general question. I know, Alexey, you want to answer it? No? I know. Magomed, was it for Alexey or something else? I don't know. Never mind.
I don't think the question is answerable at the present level of knowledge. So, yeah. But technically speaking, we do not know a substrate, a physical subcellular or molecular substrate of our memory. How is it recorded, encrypted, maintained? So any intervention, almost any intervention misses the fact that the true bottleneck for our longevity and eventually perhaps immortality is our brain, how to preserve it, how to maintain its viability and function for a long period of time.
Okay.
So when we're talking about senolytics, 40% of old brain cells show senolytic parameters. I mean, and not senolytics, senescence. What will happen if we remove all those guys? I'm absolutely not sure that it's going to be better for us.
I don't know if it was, I'm sorry, Magomed, but is it a question for Alexey or just a general?
No. You just foolishly asked me to say something, and I did. I'm sorry.
No, I asked if your question was for Alexey. Okay, never mind. We'll have a discussion.
I'm shutting down.
I just need the questions for Alexey. I'm sorry me. Which group of natural companion? I think it was for Alexey. One second, Lawrence. Okay. Do you know if there is any data about the patients with COVID in the cytomegalovirus? Unmute yourself. Yes. Alexei, unmute yourself, please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's a great question. I could not see that type of publications at the moment. And I asked many medical groups to help me to find out such data, to collect data about this. It's a hypothesis.
We need more open data.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and one last question. We have two questions for each speaker. I'm sorry. Dr. Shah is asking which group of natural compounds are more anti-aging according to this study? Alexei?
Which study? Because we know we established with the colleagues a database, geroprotectors.org. There are about 200 compounds that the lifespan in different models, and now we need clinical trials for particular compounds to be sure are they geroprotectors for human or not. It's difficult to answer this question.
Okay, that's fine. And for the next time, please, your questions should be to the speakers. The next will be Eduard and your co-author, however you want to present it, please. And the topic of Eduard will be a survey of COVID-19 patients, treated or not, to investigate the effect of treatments.
So I will start. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Do you see the slide? Eduard,
no.
can you share? Okay, I'm on my mobile, so let me try. It's okay, it's good.
Yeah, we see that we see that now.
Okay. You hear me? Yes, it works. And now we need to show. Sorry. Oops. How do we put it? I mean, sorry. How do we show it?
Can
you
put
know how to make it full screen?
The first slide.
Oh, present. Okay. Okay.
So as you may know, Eduard and me, we launched the project LifeXL. So LifeXL is about testing products, anti-aging products, and try to gather people who will take or food or supplements or therapies. And we sell also, we want them to test them biologically before, during, and after, to accelerate the process to find an anti-aging treatment that really works. So
yes. How do you see the screen or not?
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay.
So we changed the name to Time Extension, and we wanted to focus on COVID-19 with the same goal and the same strategy, to find people with COVID or without COVID, and ask them a lot of questions to see if they have symptoms or if they take a treatment, and with the answer gathered, see which one works and doesn't work more rapidly than clinical trial. So that's the idea. Maybe we can go on to the second slide. So as you all know, there were a lot of problems and polemics around which treatments could work. All the world are looking for a treatment, and some people say that hydrochloroquine works. A very famous doctors in France, but actually it turns out it seems it doesn't work as well. And it provoked, as a consequence, all over the world, 150 teams are launching therapies with hydrochloroquine, and basically we lose our time because we want to prove and disprove that hydrochloroquine is really working. So the idea was to take another angle and try another thing that the usual clinical trials. And
so this is what we call the observatory.
Yeah.
So we have a platform. It's designed to observe what anti-aging treatments work. Some people take rapamycin, for example. It's good to gather the data because then it brings science. And we do the same with COVID. So people who take hydrochloroquine, it's better that they declare it on our platform so that we can see if it works. So we started with anti-aging, and we have a great board. And they all support us for this anti-aging approach to expedite the knowledge of what works. But as we started, we thought, okay, it's fine, but now it's COVID, and people are dying of COVID, and our goal is to increase health and longevity. So that's basically what Harold has described. And so what we do is it's a simple survey. We do more for aging because we need to assess if treatments impact aging. But for COVID, it's actually relatively simple. The survey asks about risk factors. So of course, age is the biggest risk factor by much. And we will see even more than aging itself, probably, if it's possible. So age is a big risk factor, of course, but others as well, as you know. And we ask treatments, and we ask the symptoms and their evolutions. And it's as if it was a simple clinical trial. We just rely on what people do. It's a worldwide clinical trial. And so for those who like mathematics, we do a y equals f of x, where y is the evolution of symptoms and x is the treatments. It's not without bias, because of course there's declaration bias. So it will only work if people fill the survey correctly and do not invent that they take a drug and that it works. So we are, I would say, we are dependent on the risk of lobbying by pharmaceutical organizations. Yeah, so if you go to the website, or Harold, let me know if you want to interact. We basically, so we said we need to control for risk factors, and we need to monitor evolutions of symptoms. So we did not invent the questions. We found them on the US CDC questionnaire to know if you should call the emergencies. And we have a similar questionnaire in France. They happen to be quite complementary, so that's how we got the questions. That's so you see, you can you can say, for example, I had a cough during 2 weeks, and you can tick the marks, so just to show you the survey. And you can say if you take a specific treatment. If you take 6 milligrams of rapamycin per week, it's supposed to be, we think, good for aging-related processes in the body, and perhaps it protects you against COVID. We don't know, but if you happen to have COVID and try such a thing, at least it should be reported so that it can serve. Same for risk factors. We said age is the biggest risk factor. And just to make this short, this is the link. And so if you know anyone with COVID, taking a treatment or not, then just provide him with the link. You end up on the website, you put your email, and you are guided to fill in the questionnaire. So that it just looks like this. You put your email, and you are guided. Right now there are very few people who have COVID, surprisingly, in France. If you have had COVID, then you can report it also. We know, so it will be based on your memory, but the goal is to be ready before next wave. We are not sure we will find a solution, but mathematically speaking, if we have a few hundred people who answer, we should see if some treatments work. It's just like a clinical trial. So don't hesitate if you know people. For example, we asked the French Institute of Actuaries to send a letter. They discussed with us about the techniques to the French people, and so it was thoroughly discussed. But right now, very few people have COVID. I hope we were clear. I guess Harold was probably clearer than me. So we have a questionnaire. It's just like a clinical trial. People who have COVID, they are like patients and they take treatments. We didn't ask them to do so, but they do. And so we can see if it works.
We can introduce to doctors. We try to make partnership with US platforms of medical doctors, you know, at distance, teledoctors, telemedicine, and also in France. If you have contacts in your country, it will be welcome also. And it's about statistics, so we need people to answer that because it's really statistical study that we will do.
Yes, and the statistics will be put online. We have a group of people who will review it with the French Institute of Actuaries, so that we don't claim stupid things. And so it will be filtered, but we will put the results online. So I don't know if there are people here with COVID who came to the conference for that, but yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. You can stop sharing if you finished. Oh, you still have, no?
It's finished.
Okay. Please stop the presentation. Oh, great. So let's have a couple of questions. Okay, from Ebenezer, would serum therapy from supposedly asymptomatic persons who embrace longevity lifestyle practices, including diet, serve in confirmed COVID-19 patients? Do you get it?
Yes. So in fact, the tool is just, you know, a place to report results. So if you do know people who receive serum from patients or former patients, then great, they should fill in the questionnaire. We need to have enough people to see if things work. How many? It's difficult to know. We have techniques to reduce the number of needed people. We rely on existing data to control for risk factors, but so maybe 100 people. So you see that's the difficulty. If we have only 20 people who do a therapy, unless if the results are extremely clear, if you have the treatments that really works very much, it needs quite a lot of people. But we need to start. I mean, if no one starts, for now we have some users who reported, but for now I would say we have a diverse set of therapies that people reported, and so we need more people per therapy in order to get enough statistics.
Okay, great. I think there were. Oh, there's another question from Lawrence. If it gets popular, then how do we get past the problem you mentioned that pharma companies could introduce biased fake data?
Yes. So what we have in mind, but it's not yet implemented on the website, is that people can, for now, they have to pay, and everything we presented is totally free. They can pay so that we control if they are real users. We can call them, we can ask them for email exchanges and validate that they are a real user. We can give a grade. So this is something we plan. But then we need some sponsors so that we because it takes time and energy, so money somehow. So we can check that people are real and ask them for intentions to lower the risk of fake users or fake reports. It will never be perfect, and so it's between weak and strong signals because it's not in a controlled environment, but that's what we can do. And we have planned to do it, and it will be, I don't know, maybe 10 years to check if someone is a real person, so that we can check it.
Okay, thank you very much, Eduard. Thank you very much. So we'll go to the next presentation. And as we said, Metchnikoff is not just about science, it's also about social advocacy. So the next presentation will be along those lines, more advocacy, politics. So we go to you, Josh Mitteldorf, who will talk about what the response to COVID-19 tells us about the politics of medical research.
Thank you, Ilya. Am I coming through?
Yeah.
Good. So I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. You are my community, my friends, my colleagues, culturally and scientifically. We are in this quest together for longer life, and more than this, to reach beyond ourselves in ways that we can only partially imagine. I'm honored to have the chance to talk to you and grateful for your help and companionship as we launch on this voyage together. I'm going to pack a lot of ideas into this 12 minutes because you deserve no less. I'll try to concentrate on things you don't already know, and that means there'll be a lot of statements for you to question, think about, study, accept or reject based on your own research, your own background. And I'll try to provide links and references for anyone who wants them. I use the word provocative. My girlfriend said, "You're just going to piss them off." So my theme today is that we may be entering a point in history where collective threats to our lives are just as important as the individual threat from aging. First, this coronavirus pandemic is not what we're being told. The story that we read about in the papers makes no sense at all. I don't pretend to know what the real story is, but I know that the big picture is being concealed from us. Start with the infectivity of the virus. It's not the worst on record. The Hong Kong flu, swine flu, SARS, and Ebola were much worse. But the response to this epidemic has been completely unique. We have always quarantined the sick and the vulnerable, but never before have we separated healthy people from healthy people. Shutting down the world's economic engine and cultural institutions would not make any sense, even if it could save 1 million lives. This is a case made by John Ioannidis and David Katz in their videos, who've made this point. There are huge health costs hidden in this isolation that's been imposed on us. Epidemiological science suggests that these draconian measures are saving few, if any, lives. At best, lockdown is slowing the spread of the virus, delaying the inevitable by a few weeks. Eventually, we have to have herd immunity or a vaccine, and I think a vaccine is very unlikely at the reasonable time scale. So this quarantine started late, when there were already tens of thousands infected. To be effective, a quarantine has to be very tight, and it has to start early. This quarantine started late, and it's leaky. For all this and more suggests to me that the reason for the lockdown and social isolation is political rather than medical. I don't know what their agenda is. I ask for all of your help in trying to figure that out. Second, so whether or not it actually escaped from a lab, and there's a case that COVID, looking at its genetics, could be man-made. It's clear that COVID could have come from a bioweapons lab. There's an article published in Nature Medicine 2015, co-authored by scientists at University of North Carolina and in cooperation with Wuhan Institute of Virology, that describes the genetic engineering of a virus that fits exactly the description of COVID. They altered a bat coronavirus by making its spike protein mate with the human ACE2 receptor. There's another article that describes the addition of a furin cleavage site on coronaviruses. These two changes describe exactly the ways in which COVID differs from its bat ancestor. To be sure, these same changes could evolve naturally by mutation, combination in the wild, but we greatly enhance the probability of a global disaster when we engineer them in a laboratory, with all the possibilities for human error. Some of you may know there's a compelling story that Lyme disease started as an escaped bioweapon. I'm speaking to you today 20 miles from Lyme, Connecticut. The work for that 2015 paper was performed at the Wuhan Institute, but it was funded by our own NIAID, which is Fauci's agency. In fact, such gain-of-function research in viruses was outlawed long ago, but during the G.W. Bush administration, it was allowed to go forward. Obama came into office, he attempted to stop the research, but Fauci instead moved it overseas to Wuhan. You can read some of the furor over that decision from the archives of New York Times at the time, 2009-10. President Trump has just defunded this research last month, but that doesn't mean it's stopped. The worldwide budget for death research in the US and abroad, is greater than the total budget for life extension research. What is that saying? There are two lessons from the story. First, we must organize to put an end to research in biological warfare. This research can have no legitimate military purpose. There's no way that a virus, once released, will kill only our, quote, enemies and spare our, quote, friends. This kind of research has been illegal since 1972, but it goes on around the world, a biological arms race. Public records list 4 BSL-4 laboratories in the US. There are probably more. This is an existential threat to humanity, and it's up to us to put a stop to it. The second lesson is about covert political forces that are outside democratic control. There's a chance that the COVID crisis was planned and executed, but in any case, whether it came about by accident or naturally, it's clear that there are groups that are pushing their agenda and profiting from it. And look at Amazon, which has whopping increases in sales since people can't buy anything locally. Small and mid-sized businesses are folding while the corporate giants are taking up the slack. Another thing I find suspicious, credible remedies for COVID are being suppressed while we're told that only a vaccine will protect us. With all the propaganda spinning from CDC and NIAID, why are we not being told that loading up with zinc and vitamin D greatly reduces our chance of a bad encounter with COVID? Why is this research on chloroquine and intravenous vitamin C being suppressed? And in some reasons, it's actually banned. About vaccines, we know that since SARS, which was what, 15 years ago, 18 years ago, many labs have tried to develop coronavirus vaccines, and they've always ended up killing more rabbits than they saved. There's a real danger that a COVID vaccine will be distributed, maybe even forced on us, before it can adequately be tested. Appropriate testing for a drug that receives mass distribution to healthy people should be at least 2 years and should follow at least 10,000 people. No one is even talking about this level of safety testing. Another point about politics. On March 26th, in just a matter of minutes, our Congress created out of thin air $2.2 trillion in new money. They gave 90% of it to banks and corporations, 10% to individuals in the form of $1,200 tax refund checks. $2.2 trillion. Can you imagine if this kind of money was allocated in any kind of rational way for public health? If even a tiny sliver of this were appropriated for aging research, the health benefits you could buy for this kind of money would improve our lives immeasurably. This gesture shows two things. First, that when Congress has insisted in the past, well, we don't have money for social spending or scientific research or the arts, we can't afford it. This has been completely disingenuous. The Fed can create vastly more money than it does and distribute it in a way that benefits public health and infrastructure and the arts and the sciences. The reason that it does this are political and not fiscal. And we should demand that our Congress allocate much more money for the causes that we all believe in. Finally, and this is most important, the COVID crisis has fueled a major assault on civil liberties. And the majority of us are just accepting this as if it were benign policy, or at worst, it's just bureaucrats making stupid decisions. But human contact is essential for our well-being, our physical well-being as well as mental. Under lockdown, our immune systems are languishing. Our souls are hungering for touch. Our ability to organize politically is greatly diminished. The lockdown is cleverly designed to nip in the bud any opposition to the lockdown. Have you seen people on videos arrested in New York for carrying signs in the park? They're walking 6 feet apart, and people right next to them who aren't carrying signs but just enjoying the flowers are unmolested. This is, we're going to need the ability to organize if we're going to save ourselves from autocracy, from an authoritarian government, which has been creeping in on us for a long time, but accelerated since 2001. Art, music, theater, these feed our souls, and they've been cut out of our lives, except to the extent that we can take it through YouTube. Culture only feels inessential because we take it for granted. This is not the world that you and I signed up to live in, but unless we organize to resist it, it will be the shape of things to come. So for the last segment of this talk, I want to discuss individual limits to life expectancy and collective limits to life expectancy. We as a life extension community have focused exclusively on aging of the individual. And indeed, in the recent past, it's certainly true. The number of people who have died in violent conflict and famines has been much smaller than the number of people who have died of old age. But in the future, it's not obvious that this is going to continue to be true. On a global level, our institutions are fragile, unstable, because they're increasingly centralized and interdependent. The big picture is that collectively, we are consuming our planet, chewing it up and spitting it out. Whole ecosystems are collapsing, and as resources are depleted, while population continues to grow, every kind of unanticipated catastrophe becomes more likely. Not just pandemics, but weather anomalies, floods, sea level rise, famines, wars over resources, wars for global dominance. There are 9 countries in the world that are known to have nuclear weapons, and the US is saber rattling at 3 of them at this moment. In the last half century, we've learned a tremendous amount about biochemistry, but how much do we know about ecology? We have every reason to believe that ecology is just as complex, just as interdependent as metabolism. For example, we've just learned in the last few years that trees talk to each other and trade resources through an underground network of mycorrhizal filaments. And for example, we've only recently learned that the communities of bacteria in our guts have controlling effects on our metabolisms, our moods, and most of interest to this group on aging. Metchnikoff is often quoted as saying, "Death begins in the colon." So many of us imagine that we don't need the earth or her ecosystems, that we can grow all the food we need in hydroponic vats, that if we lose the non-food species, it's a tragedy for them, but a victory for us. I think we don't know nearly enough about ecology to make this work. If ecology has one lesson to teach us, it's that monoculture is fragile. Life is interdependent. Some of you might envision an AI-driven technological utopia. I don't think we understand enough about ecology to pull this off. So I imagine a future of permaculture and resource conserving technologies. But either way, we all know that our present way of life is on a collision course with limits of the Earth's capacity. There are only 2 ways this can end. Either we will find ways to live in harmony and more efficiently with our energy and resources and in tight harmony with the other life forms on Earth, or the human population is going to have to come way down. And that's not going to be pretty, no matter how it happens. If we want to live for a long time, I submit that we should be devoting as much energy to political ecology as we do to medical research. Thanks for listening. It's been a wild ride. I'm ready for questions.
Thank you, Josh. This is, of course, a very loaded, controversial issue. So if you could close your presentation, close the sharing, so we can read some questions.
Let me see if I can figure out how to do that. I have to figure out how to do that.
On top, you have, you know, kind of
Stop share. There it is. Okay.
Right. Okay, so another question from Lawrence. Josh Mitteldorf, what do you think about the long-term damage of COVID-19 and the effect on life health span? Do you think your freedom extends to the right to harm others?
Well, I don't know about the long-term effects of COVID. I've seen a couple of papers on that. I don't know. I don't think I can comment on it. Freedom to harm others? Of course not. But, you know, people walk around with a cold all the time and it gives other people a cold. People drive cars all the time. We have to make trade-offs. And healthy people meeting with other healthy people, I don't think that the risk in that is sufficient to stop us from doing that.
I don't think there are other questions that are exactly relevant, right? Okay, then it's okay. Then we continue to the next one. Daria, thank you, Josh, again. Whose presentation is this?
Robert Brook. Do you want me to go, or am I?
I don't. Daria was before, but okay, go.
Yeah, I can be next.
You after Robert, please. Okay, go, please. Thank you. And you are just a brief introduction. I don't always remember to do this. You are Bobby Brook, and you are from the Intervene Immune Incorporated, and you'll speak about COVID-19, immunosenescence, and T-cell immunity. Thanks. Yeah, go.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Ilya. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and you know, I'll certainly, you know, I think my presentation overall will be a little more kind of optimistic tone than with Josh, for sure. But you know, it's not that I don't acknowledge that, you know, those risks are real. I mean, many of them are kind of very real, and I do agree. There's a lot kind of on the political side to work on. At the same time, we have huge budgets for kind of like through BARDA and huge mechanisms available that are federally funding research. And as researchers, we have to take advantage of those, and we have to deliver. And so it is kind of a critical time, but you know, we need technology to do it. We need high quality science to do it, and really kind of focus and attention to detail by our community. Yeah, my name is Bobby Brook. I'm from Intervene Immune. I'm a bioengineer by training. I'm a co-founder of the company, which is focused on thymus regeneration and using FDA-approved drugs to reverse or prevent an abnormal age-related immune system decline. I'm a co-founder with Dr. Greg Fay, who is a cryobiologist. He's also a prominent gerontologist. He's an author of a book that's mentioned here, The Future of Aging. It's an 850+ page book that's got some really cool chapters in it, including on theories of programmed aging, which are really nice. And I encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. And I'm really thankful to be included in this group and to be part of the conference. So thank you, Ilya. And it was really nice to hear kind of the back when I was reading about Eli Metchnikoff. I learned of him as a kind of the father of cell-mediated immunity and kind of doing early studies on phagocytosis and kind of understanding the cellular response to infection. And that's something that was it resulted in a Nobel Prize in 1908. And people are still studying it today. There was a Nobel Prize in 2018 with people that are developing T-cell immunotherapy. So it's having cytotoxic T cells that are actively identifying and eliminating cancerous cells throughout the body, precancerous cells throughout the body. They're also actively identifying and eliminating senescent cells in the body. And so it's now kind of very well appreciated, still being studied intensely, kind of this role for the immune system to kind of not only fight bacteria and viruses and be kind of critical for the response to bacteria and viruses, but to also fight cancer, kind of senescent cells and more. And I also found it really intriguing what Aubrey mentioned earlier on kind of Eli Metchnikoff's kind of role as an advocate. That's really and I mean, people like Aubrey, you just can't really thank enough. I mean, I feel like we all owe this tremendous debt of gratitude for the advocacy work that he has done over the last 20 probably plus years, and really has changed the field and changed the environment and maybe changed the politics and this kind of ecology that Josh is talking about a bit, to make it more receptive in academia, just to talk about aging and to do this type of work. So it really is critical. So yeah, I mean, that was very interesting to learn. And I will acknowledge that the immune system is complex, with the innate system, the adaptive system, the different kinetics. We're in this COVID-19 pandemic. We're all getting kind of inundated with bioarchive papers and this flood of data that's coming out, but we have to kind of step back and look at and just remember the basics of the immune response, of the kinetics of it, and understand that there is the role of the innate response and then the adaptive response, and there are factors like viral load and more that really kind of dramatically affect results and kind of the severity or the lethality of a given challenge. But I'm going to try to focus more specifically on the role of virus-specific T cells and cytotoxic T cells and their critical role in mounting a robust immune response, and really I view them as playing a critical part of having immunological resilience, or kind of being able to mount a robust or a strong immune response. And T cells, the T in T cells stands for thymus. They are educated there in early life. As many of you are likely aware, the thymus atrophies or degrades with age. By around age 50, it's mostly replaced by fatty tissue, and so there's very low thymic output in old age or late life, although there is some amount of thymic output. Your kind of naive cell populations do okay. They expand in your peripheral immune system. It's not typically until around age 70 or your mid 70s when people typically experience an immune system collapse. So it's a kind of a contraction of the naive T cell repertoire, and that's associated with kind of markedly higher risk for cancer and infectious diseases and more. And in kind of looking at the adaptive immune system, it is quite complex, and there is a lot of kind of variation between individuals. So I highly encourage kind of studies to get really good longitudinal data, multiple baseline data samples when they're studying kind of any treatment. But simplifying it a bit, the adaptive immune system, really three critical pillars of it. One is the antibody response related to B cells, which people know in elderly people and older people, the antibodies become less specific. Many elderly people are unable entirely to mount an antibody response when you're looking at like seasonal influenza. But two of the other big pillars are T cells. So you have CD4 T cells, which are typically known as helper T cells, and they are indeed critical to even assisting with the antibody response. There are also CD8 T cells, which are a larger group of the cytotoxic T cells. and the levels of them decline with age. The figure on the right is from the Stanford M-Age study, and that's showing a fairly consistent reduction of naive T cell. Those are frequencies. I think the absolute counts are decline even more than that with age. And this slide is an important one. I talked about how antibody responses are not that prominent in older people, and this is an issue. This is an issue for this whole field, where you are developing vaccines that they're tested based on seroconversion or seroprotection or the antibody response, which we know in older people, who are the people at highest risk to COVID-19, that they just don't mount that robust or strong of an antibody response. And even in younger kind of healthy people, the antibody response will fade. It will kind of decline after 6 months or a year or maybe 2 years. And importantly, seroprotection or the seroconversion, this antibody response in your blood, does not necessarily confer clinical protection, actual protection to a challenge from this virus. It's a hard area to study, and the more rigorous trials, the more rigorous studies that are out there point to T cell levels and T cell responses as being much better correlates of actual clinical protection, especially in the elderly. And this mentions challenge studies and community-based studies. I think it was mentioned that kind of studies might need 10,000 people and 2 years. However, if you have challenge studies, you can get much cleaner data and much more quickly. And so that is kind of an exciting effort that's underway. And these challenge studies have been done in the past, and there's also kind of more confined community studies that they're a very rigorous trial design. These point to T cell levels and T cell responses also being very predictive of disease outcome, being predictive of like viral shedding, and I think it's critical to use these types of rigorous trial designs to just get data that you can interpret at all. It's people talk about many different treatments, like putative treatments that are out there, but how are you going to actually study those? You need and get definitive results. It's contingent on kind of quality study designs and kind of unique circumstances like cruise ships. They give you kind of better data in some cases, but challenge studies I view as one part of that solution. And it may be, I have the link here, and I have this like kind of cheeky comment. If you have friends or relatives who think that COVID-19 is just like the flu or it's harmless, you can send them this link for a challenge study and ask them to enroll, because they will be doing a benefit to us all. I want to highlight a couple of kind of intriguing findings and just really try to drive home the statement that virus-specific T cells may be the key to understanding the disease course and kind of protection to coronavirus and to COVID-19. There's data that's come out, I believe, in the past month out of Germany that's looked at the presence of virus-specific T cells in the body. It's intriguingly showing that many people have cross protection. So they already will have CD4 T cells within their body that will respond to the coronavirus, COVID-19 virus. But there's many that do not. And one of the kind of intriguing parts to use is also that T cells can help confer long-term protection. With the original SARS coronavirus, they have been studying those populations, and in them there are T cell responses that have persisted for now over a decade, and they continue to follow those patients. Well, at Intervene Immune, what we're doing is we're conducting clinical trials focused on thymus regeneration, focused on increasing kind of the adaptive immune system, the adaptive immune response generally. We're using FDA-approved drugs, so we can do these trials today. We're enrolling people now. We originally conducted the TRIM trial over the last 3 to 4 years at Stanford. We now have a new trial, TRIM-X, the extension of that is FDA and IRB approved, and that we're enrolling men and women now, and also seeking to enroll a more diverse group of individuals that are aged 40 to 80. And it's operating across the U.S. today by telemedicine, and we're also going to be collecting some new markers there, including looking more closely at T-cell responses specifically to coronavirus. One side effect or side benefit of thymus regeneration that we found in the original TRIM trial was a reversal of epigenetic age, the most predictive marker of chronological age. And so it is kind of exciting to kind of think like, what if we could implement this at a population scale where everybody could reverse their biological age by a few years at least. Then you could markedly reduce, because age is the strongest risk factor for many conditions. And I'll just make one comment that this marker here is Grim age, developed by Steve Horvath at UCLA, which is the strongest epigenetic predictor of future morbidity and mortality. So it's being used routinely within studies now for predicting future health span and lifespan, and we found that with treatment, importantly, there was a durable or sustained effect where you halt treatment and then you look back at it 6 months later and at the same level of epigenetic age reversal. And that's my talk. So thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Bobby. Please close your presentation on the top. Okay. So there was a question from Eduard, I remember.
Perhaps I can say it orally. So it's impressive that the TRIM study found that the treatment you gave to 9 persons, I think, improved the Steve Horvath clock, so which is epigenetics. I am wondering if you had also markers that are quite different. I mean, the epigenetic clock has been shown to correlate with many things that improve health. But it is probably, we think, because you measure the blood, linked to the mesenchymal stem cells, the ones that make the blood and their environment, so the niche of the stem cells, probably. And I'm wondering, so I have in mind, for example, the cardiovascular stiffness. As you know, when we age, we mostly die of cardiovascular aging before cancers. And we have vessels, and we are, this is probably the number one, mechanics that is important as we age. So yeah, so if you have other axes to know if it's good for health. And maybe the second question, and then I will stop, is could a large population take this treatment, or what are the limits today?
So first, with TRIM-X, we're definitely expanding the amount of endpoints and outcomes, and one of the items that's so kind of exciting from the response we had to the TRIM trial is that we've been approached by many collaborators who want to look at different outcomes, and we're located in Los Angeles, and we have a relationship with UCLA And as part of that, we will be looking at cardiovascular outcomes. We'll be looking at imaging of the thymus, where on one endpoint is coronary artery calcium, and we'll use those scans to look at the thymus, thymic density, and more. But beyond that, we are also looking at functional markers, and many studies have kind of linked frailty markers like short physical performance battery, sit-stand tests, but we're looking at relatively younger, kind of healthier individuals where there wouldn't be likely much of a response on those markers yet. But we are looking at more kind of robust ones like cardiopulmonary exercise testing, so we're working with a leading group in that area, which I think could end up being kind of very related, to what you're mentioning about cardiovascular stiffness or kind of functionality.
Yes, I have an anecdotal feedback from a medical doctor to whom I was discussing about this, and he was telling me that he saw patients who took human growth hormone in Belgium, and they seemed healthy and they felt healthy, but they had a very bad stiffness of the arteries. So that's why I have this in mind, just in case. And it's just a little feedback, it doesn't mean it causes at all. So I was saying
it's a great point, and typically the way growth hormone has been used or kind of abused by people has been kind of for athletic performance or kind of cosmetic reasons, not in a real kind of rigorous fashion for health span improvement. They haven't been optimizing for that, right? And so our approach is notably very different. It's different by design, where we're trying to mitigate kind of the long-term side effects, like kind of the diabetogenic effects that are known of growth hormone. And we did that with TRIM. So we expect our outcomes to be very different from people that historically have used it maybe at really super physiological doses and for totally different reasons. Related to that, to answer your second question from before, can you implement this at population scale? One of the blessings is these are FDA approved drugs, so you can use them today. And all we're doing is using them in a certain combination where you mitigate known side effects. You optimize for health span, or you optimize for some certain physiological effect like thymus regeneration, and you can run the trial today. One of the drawbacks that kind of limits the population level implementation is the cost. Well, even though this is a growth hormone is a biologic that's been on the market for 20 plus years, kind of like insulin, it's still pretty expensive, and which is a little baffling. But so we're working on that. We're working kind of with manufacturers to try to help it bring it down, and we're also looking at alternative agents that might be lower cost and rival the same efficacy. But yeah, that's one.
Maybe we could discuss later, just to say at time extension, that we presented the COVID, but typically we would be very happy to have a group who tries your study with enough measures to capture whether we do see health benefits in various axes. And the reason why I ask is because, of course, this is a big, if we start to be larger, we need to be sure of what we do, or more or less sure. And in rats, growth hormone tests did not extend maximum lifespan. There was a lot of discussions on what good it does, because it must also do bad. But we are not rats, I know, and maybe you do something specific. But that's why there is a question mark on whether it's good over the long term.
Can I jump in? Can you hear me?
Oh, it's Greg.
Hi, yeah. Sorry, I'm coming in a bit late here, but I am here. I may have missed some of the discussion earlier about your question, Edward, about negative effects of growth hormone. But I think one huge issue that nobody has previously addressed is that growth hormone is not just growth hormone, right? You give the growth hormone and you get effects that are not just due to growth hormone, they're also due to insulin. And we all know that insulin is a pro-aging factor. It may be responsible for the atherosclerosis that you were talking about. It may be responsible for the lack of life extension in the rat studies. And so that's what we're looking at. So blocking insulin activity is a fundamental activity of growth hormone. And so what we're doing is deliberately, it's a biological contradiction, right? Growth hormone is trying to shift your body from carbohydrate metabolism to lipid metabolism. And we're trying to say, no, we want to, go ahead and, burn that fat, but we don't want to block our carbohydrate processing equipment either. We want to retain good insulin sensitivity. And nobody's ever tried this before. So we think this may be the secret to getting the good effects of the growth hormone without the bad effects. But obviously, we're very early in this game. We've done one study. We have much more to do.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you very much, Bobby. So we move on. Daria, you ready?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So
we're
how
next.
do you
And
demonstrate
Daria
your
will talk
screen?
about COVID-19 is an aging-related disease. Following your work.
Yeah.
Please.
Do you hear? No, I don't hear. So how do you share your screen?
There is a bottom at the bottom. There's a button, so you can share a screen. The green one.
Green
Share
one.
screen.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to. Can you? Oh, you can see it, no?
No, not yet.
Oh. So maybe because I'm kind of co-organizer, so when I push on it, I see some instructions instead of really sharing it.
No, it's the same for everybody. Just share.
Okay.
Screen. Okay, you're good. Okay.
You're good. Okay. Okay. Now full screen. Okay. So this is quite a new area for me, so I'm a bit shy, but we put together some of our observations together with my colleague Dora Bataeva from Open Longevity. So everybody knows that COVID-19 is strikingly linked to aging in both, at least in terms of getting diseases very severe. And it is different in this way from flu or pneumonia because these type of diseases, they also affect young children. And here we have quite a few share of young children having severe diseases, like really a few. So it is really has something to do with aging. And we had an idea that perhaps we first could see the connections to first compare and maybe there would be approaches to treat COVID-19, and most importantly, we maybe could understand something about aging better. As you know, so I call this presentation that COVID-19 is an aging-related disease. As you know, there is a new code included into the ICD-11, International Classification of Diseases 11, aging-related diseases. I don't think that it will be really applied to COVID-19, but it's already clear that it's an aging-related disease. We made actually out of our proposal to WHO, which resulted from the inclusion of the new code to the ICD-11. We made a paper which is just recently approved for publishing. Here's like a preprint. So I took and we made the structural analysis of what is aging of medical literature, and we also made a list of kind of anti-aging interventions which we have now. So I will be using this list and this the structure of my presentation from this paper. So here is basically a list of aging-related pathologies from our paper. It is not complete because we only did it based on literature on humans, and there is no much published studies, for example, on epigenetics of aging. But this is like some quite big list. So let us start first of all with the enigma of AC2, which is a receptor for the virus. This enzyme is generally dramatically reduced in both humans and mice during aging. So we cannot really blame only AC2 for increased severity of COVID-19 in older people. In fact, generally AC2 is protective in normally aging individuals because it prevents overactivation of RAS. Actually, I don't think it's really full screen. Okay, is it okay that I do it not exactly full screen? No. So AC2 prevents overactivation of RAS. So basically, our idea was that coronaviruses, since they seem to decrease AC2, they might be making harm by reducing this enzyme in the human body. So AC2 is not only to blame for the viral infection, but it's also a victim. Therefore, we think there was, first of all, the idea that maybe RAS inhibitors, such as IRBs or AC inhibitors, maybe they would help COVID-19. But no, there is new data from New York and other places that people which take these RAS inhibitors, they do not do better. Although the difference is kind of insignificant, at least they do not do significantly worse. So we think that there might be a nice idea. There are two, I guess, clinical trials to try recombinant soluble AC2, which is engineered in the way so that it cannot coordinate with the virus, but still it does its nice anti-RAS, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant action. So we think that maybe that could be a nice solution. So why does this AC2 decrease in aging? Because generally, without this danger of this virus, we would like to keep it in a good, healthy, high level. One of the reasons why it declines seems to be epigenetic reasons. It is generally upregulated by SIRT1. And since there is a decline in SIRT1 with aging, it might be one of the reasons why we have deregulation of this protein. And another reason is that AC2 is downregulated by the cytokine, interleukin-1 beta, so it may be also downregulated with inflammation. We will speak about inflammation, but what about SIRT1? Just as one of the ideas, I just wonder, what if not boosters, which will also boost SIRT1 or other SIRT1 boosters, what if they could be protective against COVID-19? How about nicotinamide riboside or nicotinamide mononucleotide? We know there was a paper that nicotinamide or niacin, they're protective against experimentally induced lung injuries in mice. So I think it's really worth trying. And we heard from David Sinclair on the previous conference that they're going to try nicotinamide riboside, at least if I understand him correctly. So I think it's a promising intervention. Now let us talk about, so actually here is the picture showing how generally RAS systems, including AC2, works, how it decreases vasodilation, how it affects vasodilation, decreases fibrosis, inflammation, and so on. Interestingly, there is a link between hypertension and inflammation and RAS. So generally, angiotensin 2 works to activate macrophages, other immune cells. So there is clearly a link between this RAS overactivation in COVID-19, which we believe happens, which we suppose happens due to deregulated AC2 and inflammation. So this should be checked in observational and other studies. So basically, we see that there is that inflammation is one of the major sources of aging, so-called immune senescence. Everybody here, I guess, know it. There is an increase in the inflammatory cytokines levels in aging even without open inflammation. And we also know that inflammation, excessive inflammation, is a problem in COVID-19, for example, in the form of cytokine storm. One interesting study in small clinical trials, mesenchymal stem cells improved condition and allowed survival, hopefully, in critically ill patients with COVID-19. Then there was another study with larger number of patients, and it showed very good survivals in ventilated patients with COVID-19, which is a very good result because typically survival is very low, maybe 13, 14%, 10% in ventilated patients, at least it's data from New York and Russia. So how do we generally fight inflammation in elderly person? Not talking about COVID-19. These are some stuff from our paper. First of all, exercises decreases inflammation as well as healthy dietary patterns like olive oil, nuts, coffee. We know that probably a lot of people who already have COVID-19, they probably have healthy diet, although we don't know the percentage. So it's not a panacea, but still that might help to some extent to have a healthy diet to those who are infected. Oops. Yeah. So some more anti-inflammatory therapies which are known to be which we think are anti-aging. One of them is interesting compound Epidemics. Then there is a well-known senolytic and antioxidant quercetin, coenzyme Q10, ginger, resveratrol, magnesium, then carnosine and similar compound tarnosine. Melatonin was already promoted as a additional kind of therapy for COVID-19. Curcumin, liraglutide. Liraglutide is interestingly anti-diabetic and one of very few anti-obesity medicines. Cinadolfin, well-known Viagra and some similar compounds, they seem to be actually having a lot of anti-aging effects. There was proposal to treat patients with COVID-19 with Viagra. Pentoxifylline is another induces of the same pathways as sildenafil. And interestingly, of course, especially today, probiotics and symbiotics, they all have anti-inflammatory effects. So basically, at least it won't hurt for people with COVID-19, probably to take probiotics, symbiotics, as Metchnikoff proposed us in general, advised us in general. So aging, COVID-19 and immune senescence. Of course, everybody here knows that one of the major problems of aging is immune senescence, which manifests as one of major pathways in T-cell exhaustion, and is called by various pathological processes in aging. Interestingly, it seems that SARS-CoV-2 may also impair the function of T cells, including CD4 helpers and regulatory T cells, and promote exhaustion of cytotoxic CD9 T cells. Unfortunately, we do not have very many well-known cures for immune senescence. We know that regular exercise increases the count of naive T cells, and there was proposal to use rapamycin, although it's not clear if it's safe to use rapamycin in such severe infection. So I'm very glad that today there were other people speaking about immune senescence, because we don't really have much to propose. Okay. So here, actually, I switched a bit. Yeah, so now we return to inflammation, and we know that obesity promotes inflammation, in particular visceral obesity is strong inducer on the inflammation. So Dora placed a nice picture which shows how there is increase in the number of macrophages. Actually, here is some nice data showing that with the increased obesity, increased BMI, and increased of average adipocyte area, there is increased share of macrophages in the tissue. And one of the theory is why people with obesity are severely affected in COVID-19 is one of the theories, or it's naive wild theory, which we discussed with Dora. It's actually her theory, that what if this increased share of macrophages, they release cytokines and they also react to cytokines differently. And this makes obesity people much more susceptible to COVID-19. For example, some doctors in Russia say that the heaviest patients are really heaviest. So it's really a strong comorbidity. So what about how to actually decrease obesity? What therapies works? Unfortunately, very few therapies works. Really, the best one is bariatric surgery in general for decrease weight, body mass index in overweight patients. Yet we should just note which therapies works. First of all, exercise, a healthy diet work a little bit. They're not, you need a lot of persistence to reduce weight even with that, but still, it's not working always. There are a number of pharmacological interventions which prevent or reduce weight a little bit. Some anti-diabetic drugs works like metformin, arcarboza, others, liraglutide, exenatide, GLP-1 agonists. And actually the use of liraglutide is currently approved for treating obesity. So we're facing this drug again now in this section. So maybe people with diabetes who also have obesity and who also have COVID-19, they should be using liraglutide or similar compound, exenatide, and so on. Of course, it's not medical advice, and it should be tested in clinical trials, or maybe at least explored in an observational trial. But that seems to be promising. Promising, yes. So now we travel to fibrosis. So one of the problem of COVID-19 is fibrosis. It is found in the autopsies of deceased patients. And it may be one of the theories of my co-author of that paper, which I cited, Yuri Matveyev, that it could be worse than typical fibrosis because it involves RAS. It like upregulates RAS. And RAS is a known fibrosis induces. So it's a problem not only of COVID-19, but it's a problem of rehabilitation of people who have been through COVID-19. For example, my friend who just is recovering from COVID-19. So she said that she feels like there is plastic cringy bag in her lungs. That's how fibrosis of lungs feels. So what can we propose from our studies among geroprotectors which kind of have anti-fibrotic action? First, we know that RAS inhibitors have anti-fibrotic action effects, but we cannot propose it because we don't know if it will, how it will interact with AC2 and virus entry into the organism. So first of all, we know that healthy diet, interestingly, coffee consumption and statins, they have some anti-fibrotic effects. Aspirin does so, but we don't know if these types of drugs, NSAIDs, are safe. There were some speculations that they are not safe in COVID-19, but they are safe in some conditions in aging. Actually, aspirin is not safe if you have untreated hypertension, because it could reduce to bleeding, including strokes. So aspirin really is red here. So it's on the question here. Liraglutide has anti-fibrotic action. Again, liraglutide seems to be topping here as a promising adjuvant kind of therapy for COVID-19 for those patients which are eligible. But if you speak of eligible, can liraglutide really harm? I know some supermodels in Russia which are trying to lose weights and become, they're already really thin, but they want to be even thinner, and they use liraglutide off-label. I do not approve it, but it seems to be safe for them. So, and the last slide, what else do we have against fibrosis? And acetylcysteine is actually a known drug, is also in pneumonias, anti-cough drug. It improves symptoms of COPD, and it is effective in some conditions, and there are good reasons to actually try it as a kind of additional therapy in COVID-19 to prevent or cure fibrosis. We know that dasatinib plus quercetin may alleviate idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. We heard of that. My only concern is that senolytics may be not productive when there is active fibrosis, because senescent cells, they might kind of keep the place and not allow fibrosis happening. At least we saw this in liver and kidney of mice in some experiments. But this may not be the case. I don't know really. It should be explored. Once again, we have phosphodietylesterase 5 inhibitors like Viagra or pentoxifylline. Pentoxifylline is safer because it does not cause unwanted erection. So pentoxifylline, once again, we see it should be tested as a cure for COVID-19, in my opinion. So thank you very much. That was our ideas, what can be used, and some insights how aging maybe have common mechanisms with COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daria.
Now I will need to stop it.
Please, yes, and let's see some questions. Let's see if we have some questions.
Yeah. So I'm done, right?
Okay. So we have a question. I think it's from Magomed. Do you want to ask it directly, Magomed? Is it for Daria? No. It's a little long question.
Should I read it or what? What is it?
I can, if you want. Okay. Magomed says, I do not think that we should ever count on the vaccine. Oh no, it's also not relevant
me,
to this one. No, we're not talking about vaccine.
No, maybe we should collect Magomed's comment and have questions to Magomed after.
Okay.
Everybody present.
And Eduard, I was asking a real question. No. Okay.
No, I was just saying that senolytics seem to reduce inflammation. We have various studies in obese people, so that's one area. But I totally agree with when I need to look into the side effects that Daria mentioned. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there was a question D5 and CVDs. Yeah, thank you, Eduard. There was a question D5 and CVDs. Interestingly, that D5 inhibitors, they seem to have a good effect on CVDs. For example, there was a meta-review of men who are taking D5 inhibitors, and there was much lower rate of myocardial infarction and actually mortality in general. Sorry, I'm wrong. It was lower mortality in the men taking D5. In two cases, one of them were men with diabetes and one of them were men with after myocardial infarction. So it seems to kind of improve. It was generally developed for example, Viagra was generally developed for CVD prevention, and then it was repurposed due to its known side effect.
I kind of have a question, comment, you know, it's less scientific, more political, more social. everybody now understands that that COVID is really a aging-related disease, or somehow influenced by aging. So should we do something? So should we relate it to, I don't know, with the WHO, somehow put more emphasis in the political system and the regulation system?
Of course, we should promote it into the research programs of our states and do clinical trials. For that, we need to have good contacts with decision makers on clinical trials, and to just maybe to establish contacts with decision makers in research programs. And the best, I guess, contacts would be just prominent researchers. So we need to take them on board for that.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a few more questions, sorry.
No, we have only 2 questions.
Okay, so I will.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Daria. So we go to the last, let's say, scientific question, last scientific presentation from Francois Robin Champonel and Edouard. Will daily COVID-19 deaths reach daily aging deaths?
Yes, hello everyone. So I will start this presentation. Now I will try to share my screen, but I'm logged, now you see me from my phone, and I'm logged on my computer, so I hope it will work fine. So let me share my screen. Here it is. Do you see? Yes. Okay, so now I would need to present. I'm just looking for the.
So just to say, Francois is a specialist of supercentenarians and Jeanne Calment. When COVID came, he thought he should spend a little bit of his life at least on this, even if it's very different from supercentenarians.
Yeah.
Yes. The last 2 months. Yes. Okay. Go. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Edouard. Yes. In fact, what happened is that I was following the figures of the COVID-19, and I saw how it developed in China. After I monitored Singapore, I saw how in Singapore the epidemic was controlled, and then I saw how it developed in an exponential way in Italy. And then I saw the exponential development happening also in France, but I was surprised that everyone was, at least most of the people were talking about the COVID-19 in France like it was a kind of little flu or bad flu, but a kind of flu, and no serious measures were taken to control the epidemic. So I decided to, in the beginning of March, on 9th of March, to write a document about the epidemic dynamics and try to get this known to people in order to get a better response from the public authorities. So that's how I started, and then the INED, which is the French National Institute for Demographics, was interested to publish my paper. So I'm updating every few days a paper which is published on the INED website.
Discussed with the French government and the Korean government, so you had a lot of studies. Yeah.
Yes, so it's you, Edouard, who proposed this title, Will Daily COVID-19 Deaths Reach Daily Aging Deaths? So let me start first. Well, the answer is very easy and also very difficult. It depends on the point of view. But first I want to remind, as you know, and as just Daria explained, that it's also an aging-related disease. Although the relative risk of infection is lower for the older you are, the lower risk you have. Well, I mean, for the older people. This is from the Institut Pasteur. And also you can see here on the that the risk is much higher for older people, which you can see here also with the latest estimation from the Institut Pasteur on the left. I'm sorry if there is a little bit of French in there, but grippe, I think most people will understand because it's the same in German and in Russian. That means the flu. So on the left, you have the infection fatality rate from COVID-19. On the right, you have from the flu. So you can see that it's much higher for the COVID-19 in the oldest ages, but about the same or even less than the flu for the youngest ages. So it looks like the COVID-19 is more an age-related disease than the flu, for instance.
And on the right, maybe because you said I should describe this. On the right, you have the normal mortality rates in France, annual ones, and basically what we can see is that if every French woman had COVID-19, it would lead approximately, but a little less, to the annual mortality rate that we usually experience. So in fact, if the whole world had COVID-19, it would be like one additional year of death. A little less.
Well, little less, little more. In fact, we don't know exactly because
very precise.
And also it depends a lot on the countries because since the mortality rate depends on the age, in European countries you will have a much higher mortality if everyone is infected than, for instance, in Africa where the population is very young. So the average mortality rate, which here from the Pasteur Institute is written to be 0.6, but in fact now they released the latest estimate, which is 0.7, with a confidence interval up to 1%. And in fact, we are not sure exactly how about the figure, and it depends, of course, on the country because it depends on the population structure. In addition, it can depend on the dynamics of the epidemics because if everyone gets infected at the same time, then the ICU, the intensive care units in the hospitals will be overwhelmed, and the mortality rate will rise. Right now, you have about 70% of the people who go into ICU who can be saved, and 30% who die. And obviously, if there would be no room in ICUs, then those 70% who can be saved would probably not be saved anymore. So it could increase dramatically the mortality. Now I want to show the dynamics of the epidemics. So that's a graph which I maintain about the epidemics in a few countries. But you're all very familiar with this, so I will not spend time on this, just to show that it developed in an exponential way, and since there have been some epidemic control measures such as lockdown, but not only lockdown, it depends on the countries, then the curves flattened, and it's interesting to see South Korea in purple on below, which didn't have a lockdown, but was able to control the epidemics to some about 200. It's about 260 deaths now, which is much less than in some other countries, because they acted very soon. As soon as they had the first cases, they implemented some measures, while the other countries had the same rate of increase at the beginning, but since they had the measures later, it went up to much higher death tolls. You can see this also on the daily death. So that's a logarithmic scale again. So here you can see a very clear difference between countries like Korea and the other countries where the epidemics has got the same shape, which like a bell, but with some differences. In China, it's decreasing faster, probably because the lockdown was more strict. And in Sweden, in orange, you can see that it's almost flat, and probably that's because the measure controls are not as strict as in some other countries. Now that's the same, but about with some regions. Here you can see also that in one country you have some very big variation depending on the region. In Brittany, for instance, in black, there were some the local authorities took some measures very quickly, and although the fourth death was in this region, the epidemic could be controlled, and the toll is under 300 deaths. While in Île-de-France, for instance, in the Paris region, well, you can see all the curves from the Paris region, Milano, and other regions where it's much higher. and you can see the same about daily death for these regions. And yes, one is Stockholm, where you can see here it's decreasing almost like the other countries, because when I talk about Sweden, it's the rest of the country which is more or less flat, while Stockholm is decreasing more. Now, in terms of excess mortality, we can use the figures from the statistics organization, because before, for those figures, the amounts of death are not exactly comparable from one country to another, because it depends. Some are counting only the people who are tested COVID positive. Some are counting the one who are clinically diagnosed. Some are like in France. Some, like in Belgium, are also included those who are just only suspected to be COVID. And also some are counting the nursing homes, some are not, and some are counting people who died at home, and some are not. So it's not easy to compare these figures. but the overall shape is about the same, no matter if you include only those tested or the way you do it. Now, here we have a more exhaustive view about the mortality, because this is directly from the exhaustive statistics about death. And you can see that in France, in the Paris region, the mortality went up to 245% more than on the 2 previous years. So the answer is, if it's the COVID mortality is exceeding, reaching aging death, of course, yes, on some, at least on the peak of the epidemics, since it's more than doubling the, here it's multiplying by 3.45. But now the question is for how long it can do it. This is in Stockholm and in Sweden. So in Stockholm you have plus 160% in the peak. In the rest of Sweden, plus 27%. And in Bergamo, here you had plus 468%, and this is for a whole month, for the whole month of March. So on the days with the highest mortality, it was even more than these figures. a study has estimated that 0.58% of its population died and this was just in about 2 months. And the actual figure might be higher. And this is, and since not everyone was infected, it's very consistent with what you were saying, Edouard, before, that it could be 1% of a population who will die, at least in the European countries, if everyone would be infected.
Yes, so this is consistent with saying that if everybody was infected by COVID and if ICUs were not overwhelmed, so that's a big if, then it would be like an additional year of normal death.
Exactly. And so now about the future, will everyone be infected? That's a big question, because in France, so I showed about the Île-de-France, but the Pasteur Institute Institut Pasteur has estimated that only 4.4% of French people have been infected, and for the Paris region, which I show here, they estimated that only 9.9% have been infected. So you have the potential to have this time 10 if all the population, well, or time 9 if all the population was infected. And then this can happen in several waves or in one big wave, depending on the epidemic control strategy which you use. So here, those are some simulation from the a team from Harvard, and they did several simulation. If you do a strategy of lockdown and then you release completely the epidemic control, and then you get waves like this. In this case, it's if you want to have a strategy where you maintain a peak which is below the capacity of the hospitals. But in the end, yes, you don't have some additional mortality because of this saturation of the hospitals, but you still get to get the sorry to get the herd immunity. You need to get well, they estimated 55% of the population. Now the Institute Pasteur estimates it to be 65%. In fact, we don't know exactly, but it's in this range. And another strategy is just to maintain the epidemic control. It doesn't have to be lockdown. It can be like in South Korea, just some very proactive measures that you test, you track, and you isolate. So that's for the future. That's so there is a lot of uncertainty about how things will happen. And maybe Edouard, you want to conclude?
No, I think if there are questions, then it's interesting to have you answer.
Please close. If you finish, please close your presentation. Stop sharing. And I think there was a question from Didier.
Yes. Maybe first a joke. No, I understand where is the complot. It's a group of young women who want to kill all male leaders of the world. Just a joke, but I mean, yeah, if you really want to have a complot theory, this one is probably the best. But okay, let's be serious now. I want to ask, I saw recently a scientific article saying that the life expectancy of the people, if they had no COVID-19, the people dying, it would be 10 years. And I was surprised. I have the impression that knowing that it's already, in most cases, very old people, and also that these people in most cases have multimorbidity already. 10 years looks a lot to me. Do you know more about that? Do you have an opinion?
I read a study from a British study who estimated that the life expectancy of people who died from COVID-19 was 13 years, I think, for men and 12 for women, if I correctly remember. Maybe that's the study which you read also.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
And well, yes, I think it's consistent with the figures which we see. For instance, in Sweden, the average age of people in ICU is 59 years. In fact, we stress a lot that it's old, people who are quite old who are the more at risk, but a lot of younger people die too, and even those older people who die, they still have a few years of life expectancy. So now we even have some children who die. It's only very few, but it's a specific pattern that they develop some Kawasaki type syndrome a few weeks after getting infected, and this is something which we discovered only recently. In France, there have been more than 100 children who died, but who had this disease, and this disease has received a specific name in the United States. I think it's 125 or between 125 and 150. I think it's 145 children who have been diagnosed with this in France, and one died this week in Marseille. There are 3 children who died in New York, one died in Sweden. In almost each country, there is a few, one or few children who died, and but quite a significant number who got the disease. So in various ages, you can still have some mortality, and with some different patterns.
As we, if I may, as we have seen, mortality is very age-related, slightly more than the general age pattern of mortality. Well, of course, it depends on how we measure it, so we are not sure, but it's about the same. So it's an exponential with age, right? And maybe if I may have a question, what do you think, Francois, of this solution where we isolate old persons and people at risk?
Well, I think in theory, it's because yes, you mean the solution where you try to reach herd immunity.
Yes, to have how to say, the economy run with people at work, etc., and to have old persons and people with who are obese or with diabetes isolated. This seems a good compromise, but maybe it's completely wrong. I don't know.
Well, I think it sounds like a good compromise, but I think it's very theoretical, and it raises several questions. First, what limit of age will you put for people to be protected and for people not to be in this protected people group? And there is a big risk that it will not work, and that the epidemic will still propagate in older ages. Personally, it's just my personal opinion. I think that the most effective way to control the epidemic is to do like in the Asian countries, where your objective is to get almost 0 cases. So you are able to control the few cases which are there by identifying the cases, tracking and isolating. You should isolate patients, well, even when they are not patients, but just contacts, even if they don't have symptoms and even if they are not tested positive. Of course, in a country where you have a lot of people already infected, it's difficult or impossible to use this strategy. But when you get to a low level of infection, then you can use this strategy and maintain a very small amount of infected people. And then you can start again your economy. Like in China, they started even the tourism. I think personally, I think that's the best strategy. But either you do it from the beginning, or if you don't do it from the beginning, you have to get back to a low level of infection which you can achieve more or less rapidly depending on the measures which you take.
And if I may, because I don't see questions.
May I ask a question,
sorry.
actually? So I actually, we track statistics, and France is the only countries which has huge variations daily in the number of cases. Like maybe one day they have 140 cases, and then they have 700 cases. Why is that?
Well, it depends. You have some huge variation in the week. I had a graph here. It was a weekly average, a 7-day moving average, which I represented, so it looks flatter. But indeed, if you look at the days, then you see a cycle where on each Sunday you get a very low amount, and then on Monday, Tuesday, you get because there is a delay in the counts, and then in each country the count is not instantaneous. In fact, you get this even more in Germany than in France, in Sweden even more. But in Sweden they also give the actual date of death, and if you look at the actual date of death in Sweden, currently it's about 6 days before the date when the count is released. And also, yes, you can see in the statistics of Lombardia, for instance, in Italy, at the moment you can see a high mortality in Lombardy. But in fact, it's because they are adding some counts from people who died in April, but they're just adding them in the totals now. So it gives an artificial impression that the mortality is flat or even rising, while in fact it's still decreasing.
Okay.
I wanted to say, it seems to me that curing COVID is like curing aging during 1 year.
Yeah, good point.
Yes, but also one thing which we don't know is how long people will get immunity, because people who survived might be infected 5 years later and not survive this time.
Okay, thank you very much, Francois. Thank you very much, Eduard. So the last three talks by Didier, Igor, and Martin will be more society related. So before that, I suggest that we have a small kind of society related break. We have a recorded greeting from Ukraine, from Metchnikoff's birthplace, from his museum, by Ludmila Babay, who is here, and Olga Berveno, who run a Metchnikoff museum in Kharkov area, and they educate young biologists, little children, to university students, organize competitions and field trips. So that's the kind of public education that we need, also relate to aging. So I hope this really becomes grassroots, not only in Ukraine, everywhere. So I want to show you their recorded presentation and read their greeting in English. It will take a couple of minutes. 1 second. Share screen and this one. Okay, so here goes the presentation from the Center of Youth Education in Kharkov area. Dear participants of the International Online Conference, welcome to Ukraine. Dvorichna, the birthplace of Ilya Metchnikoff, a Nobel Prize laureate in physiology and medicine. We, the Center for Children and Youth, the Ilya Metchnikoff Museum, the Ilya Metchnikoff Foundation, are proud to be compatriots of the great scientist. The future Nobel laureate spent his childhood, school, and student years in Slobodyanshina. The worldview of the scientist, his desire for scientific knowledge, was formed in childhood and adolescence. His dream to dedicate his life to science, to the struggle for human health, originated here. We carry out extensive research, cultural and educational work in honor and promote the great countryman. 5 years ago, we created a museum called Our Great Countryman, Ilya Metchnikoff, Citizen of the World, whose main task is to promote the name of the great scientist. Every year, we hold Metchnikoff reading with the participation of Ukrainian and foreign scientists and gifted youth. Excursions, regional tournaments for young biologists, and exhibitions have become traditional. In connection with the celebration on the 175th anniversary of the birth of the first Nobel laureate of Slobodyanshina, we took the initiative to reconstruct the monument to the great countryman. This spring, we planted the gardens in memory of Ilya Metchnikoff, about 2,000 trees. We also plan to open a student research center, Ideas of Ilya Metchnikoff, Live in the 21st Century. The work of the creation of the World Electronic Book and Memory of Ilya Metchnikoff, which is coming to a conclusion. We will include scientific articles by scientists and local historians. Ilya Metchnikoff is a scientist who started to struggle for human health and healthy aging. His scientific legacy is more relevant today than ever. We believe that only the joint effort of scientists around the world will help to overcome COVID-19 and become a new step in the development of science. Together we will win. We invite you to visit Dvorichanshina, and we hope that we will become a center of communication for scientists, followers of Metchnikoff. So thanks, Olga, thanks Ludmila for this presentation. I hope we really increase this grassroots education for biology of aging. And thanks for your work. Here are a few more pictures from the greeting. Okay, thanks. That was the that was the break, and now we go to the last section of our conference, which is more dedicated to society. As we say, Metchnikoff was also about advocacy, about society. So Didier, please, you go first. Didier, please unmute yourself. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Can you? Yeah, I forgot to unmute myself. Indeed. Can you see the screen? I suppose yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Hello. Well, actually, it's not only about social and political aspect. It's about big data for COVID-19 and aging. But okay, to speak about maybe social and political aspects, I think that the aspect that we have to notice in this time of COVID-19 is that never in the history of humanity there was so much energy to save lives, and especially to save the lives of old people. So I don't think that there is a complot, but I think that it's really a change in the way people think about aging and about the priority to save lives, and this is very important. Thank you very much, Ilya, for organizing all this technically, scientifically, and even for to translate. And sorry for my English. You know, I used to say that I will need 200 years to be able to speak English correctly, but I'm not sure it will be enough. When I begin this this kind of speech, I always begin with the number of people dying each day of old age, but now I can also add the number of people dying of these specific diseases related to old age of COVID-19. It's supposed to be yesterday precisely 5,072, so it's about 5,000 a day, and it would be probably 200,000 now if there was no lockdown and big measures. So about big data and health, where is the information? So you know that it's in the scientific literature, of course. It's also in the administrations, in the medical institutions, hospitals, health sector, social security, plus secret services. And it's in your smartphone and in the information that you give to the tech giants, to the social networks, and so on. Now, few things about big data and COVID-19 and about COVID-19 in general. Well, it's incredible the number of things that we still don't know about this virus. We still don't know precisely the fatality rate, the degree of virus contamination, the number of people who are asymptomatic, how long when they are asymptomatic are they able to contaminate, what's the degree of risk of being reinfected, the risk of infection, different fatality rate or not according to the strains, according to the affected population, and according to the climate and weather. And still with all the data that we have, we should be able to know that. But it's so difficult to put all data together. That's probably one of the problems. And also, one aspect I will come back later to that. We also don't know a lot about how to cure the virus. We don't know about reinfection after vaccination, of course, because we don't have vaccination yet. We don't know about the effect of antibodies of antiviral. We don't know about the effect of other drugs. And we should know because we have enough statistics of people dying of COVID-19, and we know what we know, or at least we could know what they had before and what was their treatment. Yes. So one of the very important aspects is how to share data. You maybe know about this call of the president of Costa Rica to the WHO and to leaders to have more cooperation. So it was a general request, but it's also, of course, about sharing of data. We have a lot of data, but and you can find it a little bit everywhere, but still we don't have enough to share it in a really very good way. So here, just for the people using the slides after, you have many websites for giving a lot of information, of course, about COVID-19. You have this project of an application for Google, Android, Google, and Apple for tracing the contacts. Okay. It's you have also, of course, more general websites where you have really a lot of information, but like already during the last speech somebody was saying, very often one of the problems is this information is not totally let's say reliable. A few things about now radical longevity and data. So first, there are also, of course, many things that we don't know about aging. For me, the most important question is why can we not prolong maximal lifespan while we can prolong average lifespan? That's for me really the biggest question. Are there gene therapies possible? Are there products who are really prolonging average lifespan? I'm almost sure most of you are thinking, yes, I know about one product, but I'm also sure that if I would ask to each of you, you would disagree and say, yeah, metformin, we are really sure. And some people will say, yes, rapamycin, we are really sure, but actually we are sure for about nothing. So are there other therapies that we can imagine? And well, a little more fringe question is, can we ever have consciousness in silico, and can we have so kind of immortality, but in another space than the physical space? So the big data that many longevists forget concerning aging is what I said already. So you all know that we win more or less 3 months of life expectancy per year since the last 200 years. We won in our country, well, in rich countries we won, 50 years the last 200 years. but we won only 3 days or even less than 3 days a year since the last 2000 years if you speak about the maximal life expectancy. Never forget that 2000 years ago, Terentia died in ancient Rome, and she was 103 years old, and the oldest person in the world at the moment is only 117 years. So what now many ethicists forget about aging, and we have no big data as far as I know, it's what's called the Ehm's law, the fact that there is the Moore's law that you all know about, and there is the Ehm's law, the fact that concerning patents and concerning medical research, things are slowing down. And this is for a big part due to all these ethical committees and all these rules that were good when they were decided long ago, but that are now slowing everything, even for the COVID-19. Yeah, for the COVID-19, it's accelerating, but still not enough, in my opinion. Okay, a few problems concerning COVID-19. Sorry, a few problems concerning big data for COVID-19 and for aging. Well, the first one is all aspects related to GDPR, legal aspects, social aspects, acceptation. And for me, the answer to this is that regulation must focus especially and almost only to ensure that health data is used for health and research purposes and not for anything else. And if this rule is really there and that people can trust this rule, I think that the problem of social acceptation would disappear very easily. Even though when you ask people, do you want to share data for medical research, most people will say yes. Do you want to share data for commercial uses? Most people will say no. So, and then we were not speaking about this a lot today, but there is this question of trash in, trash out. So how to have veracity for the data, how to guarantee it. In theory, you can say that we will use artificial intelligence to see weak signals and to distinguish between, let's say, weak signals and false signals. But artificial intelligence can be fooled by data that's not correct. So it's one of the positive things in this strange world is that we have statistics coming from various countries, and then that we can have more reliable information by comparing in countries. But sometimes it's really, for me, incredible how much we don't know. So just an example for my small funny country, Belgium. So in Belgium, for 25% of the people dying of the COVID-19, for 25% of the people dying, we don't know about the sex and about the age of the people, of these people. Why? Because in the retirement houses in Flanders, so people, the north part of the country, they just take the information, people dying or not, and they don't take the rest of the information. Also, I don't know if it is the same situation in other countries, but in Belgium, when somebody suspected of dying of COVID-19, is, well, when there is somebody, excuse me, dying of COVID-19 suspected, there is no sample taken after. So we will never know. And so we will never know precisely for the statistics what is the situation. And concerning aging, you have this very strange situation of vanishing centenarians, vanishing supercentenarians. It's in Japan, it's in other countries. So in this very advanced world and in our very advanced countries, there are people who are supposed to live 100 years. We even don't know if they exist or not. That's crazy, but that's the reality. Yes, it's already all for my speech. I hope that you have questions. I also hope that we can continue the discussion later. And yes, please, if you disagree with me, don't hesitate to send emails. And even if you agree, yeah, and
Thank
you
you.
can
Thank you, Didier.
yeah, also subscribe to the newsletter. That's all.
Thank you very much, Didier. Please close your sharing. Do we have some questions? Okay. Ozinakachi asks, what always bothered me about this whole thing is why don't we take the antibodies from people who have recovered from this virus and make a serum to cure people? We can, we have the technology, we just don't want to. It's strange that nobody is thinking about this. I think people are thinking. Didier?
Yeah, yes, sure. There are people thinking about it, but one of the problems is in the many things that we don't know, there is this aspect that we don't know if or we are not totally sure that people who have the virus, who had the virus, and when they are cured, that they could not get the virus again. So one of the things is this, yeah, using the plasma or using the antibodies, but yeah, and probably it would be at least working on the short term. But yeah, I don't think, and that's once again a big difference with Josh. I don't think that there is something organized here. It's just that many people are trying to find a solution in many places, but it takes time. Yeah, and yeah, I don't know how many teams are working on this, but I'm sure that there are people working on this.
Yes, Didier, if I may add something, I saw that a team in China had made some testing on this and they had some successful results. And there is a team in France also who conducted a research on it, and they also had very positive results. So I didn't read the publication, but I saw some information, preliminary information, and it really seems confirmed that this is a technology which works.
Yeah, what I agree is, well, at least in the media, but I think also practically for the people working, there are, I would almost say, too many people, or at least there are many people working on vaccination, and probably less people working on medication now. And yeah, it's almost sure that we will not have a vaccination before 1 year. It's not totally sure that we will ever have a vaccination because it's quite complicated. So I think that it should be one of the things that we should try to promote more. And you know this very classical idea: it's better to have prevention than to cure. Well, here, sadly or not, but it's better to find a solution to cure or to have a treatment to look for vaccination who would make a prevention. But we are it's for in a long time, almost sure, and not totally sure that we will have it.
Okay, another question from Vyacheslav. Didier, what stopped Western developed countries having a lot of money for running a mega project for defeating aging? Ethics again? Little question. Didier?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the exactly. Yeah, here what stopped Western to having a lot of money from money. Yeah. You know, that's the 100 billion questions. That's because there is a complot of young women who don't want it. Just joking, of course. I mean, why? The most leaders of the world are old people, and so most leaders, the best thing that the only thing that they could do to have a life expectancy of more than 20 years when they are would be to have a cure against aging. So why? Well, why? That's more, let's say, a social, psychological, and political question. Deeply, I think, and I'm not the only one, that it's for psychological reasons. We think that we are at the moment we have no choice. We have to die, and it's something awful. And to make it to make it possible for us to cope with that, we have to accept it. And most people, so they accept it, and they don't want, or they try to forget about it, and so they don't invest energy to fight against it. But of course, know that it's something who looks possible. Yeah, we should have more energy. Yes. No, maybe for the COVID, we are really using a lot of energy, and we see that diseases related to old age, it's really very, very difficult to stop it, let's be honest. Yeah, but of course, my hope, it's not your question, but I just finished for this. My hope is very much that once this pandemic is somehow behind us, that all the energy devoted to against this pandemic will switch for energy against aging. And I think that's what, well, most people here also think. That's it for me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Didier. So the next presentation is from Martin Lipovsek from the Slovenian Vital Life Extension Association, who will speak about the results of their recent research about public desire for life extension. And I can just tell you some news. Just today, Slovenia announced that they're the first European country that's actually finishing the epidemic. So congratulations.
Thanks.
We follow your example.
Okay, I'm sharing screen.
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me and see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, super. So I will present, as Ilya said, results of our research. And I am president of Slovenian Society for Vital Life Extension, and we are part of ILA. And this project was a bigger project. Also, faculty cooperated, and we got fundings from EU and our republic to make this project happen. So I will just go to the findings. So we measured desirability of life extension, and we measured level of ageism. This research happened recently. It was in spring 2020, and we got 761 people that filed our whole questionnaire. That was 12 minutes long. So I will not talk long about ageism findings, because this would be then too long for this presentation, but I will focus on life extension desirability. We found that there is general desirability and that there is economic desirability, which means that people would be willing to pay for life extension. Our survey was actually unique because it was made out of two big parts. In the first part, we asked people about ageism and desirability of life extension for today. And then we asked them in year 2040. And we told them that imaginary scenario, that they have to vividly imagine that there will be life extension technologies available to all. Almost all would use it in this year. People could see the benefits, like there will be very old people, extremely old and still healthy, and so on. And we got statistically significantly higher level of desirability in this second scenario. And we believe that these results are actually showing us more realistic picture, because people usually don't fully think about life extension when we just ask them. But when they try to imagine everything, they are more prone to to support it, and we believe that this shows more true face of these results. So also in the following these presentations, in the following graphs, they will mostly be from the scenario in 2040, but they're not much different. I mean, there is not complete difference also before. You will see what the differences are, because some graphs are have shown the difference, but this on the picture is for 2040 scenario. So some other results, you can read them on the left. So we see that there is higher desirability among middle-aged people, among the richest, among men, and educated. So here are some more general data. We can see this effect that I was telling you about these two scenarios. So this is before life extension scenario implementation and after. And we can see that people, when they hear that it's possible that a lot of people are living very long, more people are also willing to or wish to live very long. We also asked them about which values would be most motivating for them, and we found out that health is very motivating value. And this is interesting, especially it is interesting because the second least motivating value, people say that it is longevity. So probably people are afraid that they will be very old and fragile at the same time. And I think that these are interesting findings for our community. How can we address people? So we got specific findings from NGOs. You can see the graph on the right, how much people support NGOs. And then this text, you can read it, and I will just quickly present it. The point is that we find out that knowledge of aging mechanisms and knowledge about life extension is correlated, positively correlated with each other, is positively correlated with support of life extension societies, positively correlated with care for one's health, and the second is also positively correlated with people's willingness to pay for life extension. So this shows us that we are actually having a real possibility to impact with our education of public, to increase support of our societies, and also for people's willingness to use life extension technologies to pay for them. We got useful findings for companies. For example, we found out how much usually people are would be willing to pay for such a life extension procedures, and we found out that they're keen to invest into the companies that deal with life extension. Finally, we also found out about politics. Interesting things. You can see that majority of people would like states to invest in biomedical technologies that would allow longer and healthier life. And even more significantly, almost all people would support this statement, and most would completely agree that they would be angry if these technologies would be available only for rich. This is this. So sorry. At the end, I must say that all the results will be published in scientific article. We will go into details. We will publish scientifically processed data, and you will get much more than this short presentation. If you're interested in this kind of research, we have much more to say about ageism. here I wrote one interesting finding, that the desirability of life extension is statistically significantly negatively correlated with ageist attitudes, which is, I think, that's quite a nice finding. And also because this will be also in English, these all questions, everyone else can do it, for example, in Google Forums, and also international, how to say, comparison can be made with these kind of questions. So here are the authors of the project, all of them. I thank the whole team of this specific research, of our society that helped, and of people who funded us. So for the end, I just wish to make a short advertisement. We have a conference in Slovenia named Being 100 Years Young. It is on Zoom. We have great speakers like Ilya and Uberi are speaking. Access is free. You just need to register, and the registration link you can find below where to register. And first day of conference will be in English. So everyone is welcome to join. This is all from my side, and now you can ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Martin. Please close the presentation. Daria, did you want to ask something? And I also want to ask for you, you know, in case you guys know some publication, you know, some journal that can take it. It will be interested. Hopefully, high impact or noticeable. So you're welcome to make suggestions as well. Yes, Daria, do you have a question? Or did
I only wanted to ask if it's published, so it needs to be published.
We are in the process of writing the article, so we will let you know when it will be published and where it will be published and so on.
Okay, Didier, you had a question? No?
Well, it was, well, okay, first, it's not a question, but really congratulations, it's great. I had one question, can we use it again, but you answered already. And maybe one more question is, did you ask questions about, let's say, the psychological reasons that people would have to be against, like I was speaking about terror management theory, or it was only, this aspect was not approached?
We had question, I'm afraid of death. So this question is there. But the questionnaire was 12 minutes long and part of it repeated 2 times. So we didn't make impossible, so we didn't put too much questions inside, but there are some more questions that could be.
And the answer, I'm afraid of that, is the people who were afraid were more interested in life extension or not?
I wouldn't say from the memory, and I would need to check the how to say the results. But I'm better not stating something if I don't have a number.
Okay. And Primo's asking, are you sure there were not women in excess in your population? The urge for good looks. Can you answer this?
Actually, we had on our questionnaire a bigger amount of women, but this what you saw. Actually, people said that yeah, that looks are not motivating for them. So I think I'm not sure how to interpret it, because how to say, other things in society show that people are very concerned about their looks, but we will see how to explain it. These results.
Martin, in fact, I was just joking, you know.
Okay.
No, actually, it's a serious question. It's really serious. How do you target different population, women versus men, according to different social status? It's a serious question for advocacy, actually.
I think I do have a question.
Yes.
The study has not produced anything, you know, unexpected, right? So all these answers and relationships were kind of within the realm of naturally expected. But the problem is a question unanswered with so many people, let's say 2/3 of a population, wanting to extend healthy lifespan. Why then these people do not make an active contribution to the anti-aging research? Is it related to mistrust to science? Is it related to too much money and greed involved? So what essentially is holding them from actively participating in this process?
I think that this is one of the big questions that also we have. But as you can see, like one of the things could be simply that they don't have enough knowledge and enough of faith that this is possible. Like you saw that in the scenario 2040, they supported life extension much more. So this means that in the scenario of this time, of our current time, they don't support it because probably they don't even believe it that it's possible.
I would imagine so.
Mm-hmm.
No, I just would imagine that people do not really believe that it's technically or biologically possible. So the main problem for us, gerontologists, if you will, to gain a little bit more credibility, I would imagine, right? Otherwise, nothing is going to work. And we need to convert ourselves in the eyes of the public from sellers of the dream into practical deliverers of the solutions. And so far, it's not happening.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Martin. We'll continue. Our last speaker is Igor Sirotila from Moldova. Metchnikoff.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone.
Hi. Metchnikoff also had the Moldovan roots. He had roots everywhere. He was born in Ukraine and he worked in Russia, and he had some Jewish ancestors and Russian ancestors, and he studied in Italy and Germany, and he worked in France. So if you really need a citizen of the world, here is one. So I hope there'll be more people like him. So Igor will tell how we can build on Metchnikoff's legacy. Please.
Yep. Okay.
You can share your presentation.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. So once again, hello to everybody, and congrats on this very interesting event. I hope you are hearing me okay. Yes, like Ilya said, maybe I could paraphrase it. There's another famous saying that science is international as the multiplication table is also international. It can be national, and so is Metchnikoff, maybe a personality that goes far beyond the borders of a certain country. But nevertheless, I would like to highlight some initiatives that we have done in regard to his history, and maybe still a part of him as a Moldovan. So Metchnikoff, I spoke is, and I liked very much the presentation of Ilya on his history, and thanks for this, and also the opportunity when joining Ilya to get to know your work with in the book of the history of life extension. I just want to point out what we talked about at the beginning of Moldovan lineage that Metchnikoff has, is that his father's family came from old Moldovan boyar named Milescu Spataru. It's a very celebrated personality in Moldova. One such example of recognition is one of the highest distinctions of the scientific community of Moldova is a medal entitled Nicolae Milescu Spataru, and it's awarded for scientific international excellence. It was awarded to several ambassadors. international renowned scientists, also R&D promoters and policymakers. In terms of longevity, the organization that I am directing is one of a few in the country that deals, and in the eastern part we want to spearhead this region in terms of longevity. In this regard, we joined the ELA. Also, we have ties with all European academies, and we prioritize actions in longevity, preventive medicine, food, ecology, sharing economy, and the technology side of R&D. One initiative that I would like to speak about here at the conference and maybe get your input is that of the cradle of the beginning of longevity gerontology / gerontology sciences is the linked with Metchnikoff, but also with personality of Kotsovsky, who established the first institute for the study and combating of aging, and we have identified it as being in Chisinau, and it was one established in 1933, later reorganized in 35 by the Romanian government, who was Moldova was part of it. And also another interesting idea to put forward and discuss would be, as in previous questions from other participants were asking where to publish. We are looking into for partners in this regard. As you know, the first one was the first journal on the problems of longevity or on aging was also edited in Chisinau. It was in German and French, and we currently tracked the remaining journals to the Library of the Romanian Academy and also the National Archives of Moldova. The same journal was later renamed to another title in 1937. We have a possibility here to build together, maybe discuss an initiative to restore this journal in some format as truly a journal for longevity science. Also, some of our initiatives that deal with current times, not more such of a historic project, is that we launched a unique platform for that brings together experts, and we try to identify and rate longevity and emerging technologies. On the slide you can see the address, and I invite you all to join and share your thoughts and ratings of projects, whether those curated by our experts or maybe your own projects. We are open, and this platform we very much would like to popularize it in this community. Also, as a project that we are now working on, but it's been rather difficult due to the quarantine, based on an experience we have in the academic sphere. We are drafting a line of products that deal with the prevention of diseases, restore and strengthen immunity, and some of them, one of the most prominent ones, are those based on grapes, amaranth, topinambru, grapes especially. We have Moldova is very well known for its wine and grapes production. Also now, as a response to COVID, that alongside the ELA we consider an age-related disease, we launch a platform, Future Health Lab. It's also linked to the LEAF forum I presented above. And currently we support initiatives on more open, fast and effective research against COVID, as well as exploratory actions. We are open for that. And yeah, that's it. And if you are interested in the stuff I presented, come talk to me. Here are my contacts. And thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'm more than open to answer.
Thank you, Igor. So do we have questions? This is a long question. No, it's not a question. So we have one question from Vyacheslav, I think. Igor, what caused Moldova to be so obsessed with bioethics that it introduced a special law in the criminal code punishing for human cloning?
I don't know if obsession was, I would say that it's obsession. A lot of criminal legislation is harmonized and is being brought without adjustment into national legal system from the EU, and maybe due to this that there's EU regulation on cloning, and in the harmonizing process, maybe it was brought to Moldova, but I don't think it was well adjusted, because there's very few science-driven policies in Moldova, more of such as repetition from Western countries. So if that answers the question.
Other questions? No? No. Guys, thank you so very much for participating in this event. You know, it's really an important event. You know, Metchnikoff is important, but it was really just a reason for us to get together to advance in the field, to get all kinds of opinions, you know, to really use this. It's nice to say, but to really use the situation to actually benefit humanity, to help people recognize aging is an important contributor to disease. So I hope we can really build on this.
Hey, Ilya.
Yeah.
I actually had a quick question. Do you think I can ask a question real quick?
Yeah, go.
Hey, everyone. My name is Bobby Ridge, and yeah, I just jumped on. Edward invited me, and and so I didn't see too much of the presentation, but I saw probably the last like 10-15 minutes, and I noticed one thing I noticed was you provide a food source for longevity, and I saw 3 different food sources, and are those like associated with specific life extension treatments? Like, for example, in grapes, there's resveratrol.
Well, I'm sorry, Bobby, we're not going to go into this kind of detail. We're closing the conference. You're welcome to discuss with this particular speaker offline. Once again, I'm happy that we all met, that we had this wonderful gathering together of like-minded people, that we all inspire each other. And I hope there'll be more of this, you know, more and more, you know, upward and onward, as we say.
Well, Ilya, thank you very much for coordinating this conference, organizing it, and taking the lead. Guys, we actually need to write perhaps a report, and if anybody is willing to help Ilya, and I'm willing, let's join the forces, so to say. And regarding Bobby, I had this presentation on some geroprotectors. Maybe if you write me on Facebook, I could send you the link to my presentation.
All right. So if there are no other closing remarks, you know, the words of wisdom will be just closing this until the next anniversary, hopefully in good health, you know, without any epidemics, you know, just with verified extension of health and longevity for the entire world. Thanks.
I'll just thank you for the good show, Ilya, and my applause.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bravo. Good work, Ilya.
Bravo.
Bye.
Thank you, Ilya. Well done. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ilya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you later.